Welcome to Without Regret, the podcast. This podcast is for people who are looking for inspiration to overcome obstacles in life and want to see that it is possible to live your best life and become successful, whatever that means to you, regardless of your circumstances. Hear from me and my guests as we share our stories of perseverance. My name is Tamara, and I'm the host of Without Regret, the podcast. In this podcast episode, we delve into the extraordinary life of Derick Johnson, a U.S. Army veteran, life coach, and trainer who defied the odds to become a beacon of strength and inspiration for others. Growing up in the South as a mixed-race individual, Derick witnessed hatred from both sides. However, he used this adversity as fuel, combining it with the challenging backdrop of a home scarred by alcoholism and rage. Fitness became his refuge, allowing him to find solace and remain composed during moments that could easily break others. Derick's experiences served as a foundation for his success, propelling him forward both in his U.S. Army career and his coaching journey. While the military provided a platform for his growth, his coaching career allowed him to channel his experiences into helping others navigate their own challenges. Remarkably, Derick not only healed himself, but also extends his knowledge to guide others on their paths to healing. His story stands as a testament to the power of resilience and self-discovery, demonstrating how the darkest moments can be transformed into wellsprings of strength. Join us for an episode that captures the essence of turning pain into power. Derick's journey exemplifies the potential for growth and transformation that resides within us all. Prepare to be moved by his story as he shares his remarkable evolution from a troubled past to a future filled with purpose, healing, and the desire to empower others to thrive. Hello, Derick. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. How are you doing, Tammy?
I'm doing wonderful. Welcome to the Without Regret podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I was just doing a little bit of intel. I listened to the beginnings of a couple of different podcasts that you were on before. Okay. The one I was listening to just now was the flipping pain on the financial freedom.
Yes.
For physicians specifically, it says, but that's the one I was just listening to. The other one you were talking
Awesome.
About military stuff, and I was like, that one doesn't apply for me. I mean, it might apply a little bit, but But in general, I like to hear people talk about kind of the struggles that they've had to overcome and what led them to realizing that there was a change that needed to be made, or that they specifically had the control to make that change, and then how they went about doing that. So I would love for you to tell me your story.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Derick Johnson, and I was in the U.S. Army for 10 years. And I grew up with father that was Army for 20 plus years, and my mother is German, so she was a kindergarten teacher. But we lived in a beautiful house in Florida, screened in pool, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths. We had the party house or the get-together house, so everything was always positive from the outside. But then behind closed doors, once the guests would leave or once mom was off the phone, that's when the alcohol would take over. And I essentially, between like middle school to, I would say between the age of 11 to 17, that's when I was like the verbal to physical punching bag to be the outlet. But I think it was all a gift. So from the outside, had successful parents and had everything, but all that was by design looking back. And it really helps make my career in the Army very easy. Because when you have 6'3" dad in your face or a short German mother, and they're just releasing on whatever trauma they had growing up that they didn't get their help for. I was 12 or 13, and I realized that they weren't yelling at me. They were yelling at their past or whoever did something through me. So I grew up really quick. So between the age of 12 to 14, I was just brainwashing myself with Tony Robbins, Les Brown, like all cassette tapes, videos, all kind of stuff, books, because I knew that if I learned the brain, I could control my own psychology and eventually be able to help others. So playing sports in school, I was always chosen as the team leader. And then in group projects, I was chosen as the group leader, even though I was the quiet kid. But I realized that I just had no fear of public speaking because of all the wild stuff that was happening with family. and I would gravitate towards people that were going through dark things. And I truly believe that anybody, male or female, that has gone through some wild stuff, they can usually read people really well, and they gravitate towards them, or strangers come up to them and they're like, hey, I just need to pour out. And I just naturally, I don't know, I was just that person that I could sit
I
in an
feel like
airport
I'm
right
that
now.
person too. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And like you could sit in an airport and somebody just comes up to you and they're like, hey, how you doing? And they're just like, boom, 30-minute rant. And then you just take it. You're like, hey, I appreciate it. You feel better? Great. And you
Yeah.
might not
And
ever
they
see them
always
again.
say,
And
how many times have you heard, I don't know why I'm telling you this? Right?
that's always like the first 30 seconds. They're like, I don't know what. And I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, just release. It's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so long story short, that upbringing really helped my military career along with personal training and also life coaching. I always knew that coaching was going to be my path. And I just had it mapped out where I was not going to do 20 plus in the military. I just wanted to utilize them for schooling, certifications, and all that. And to use the analogy that you grow up quick, it truly does happen to the people that want to make a change of family curses or traumatic experiences. So I never saw those things in a negative light. When I was a teenager, I would always watch movies and based off of life stories of people that went through things way worse, which would help me to like justify the present moment where I was like, hey, it could be worse. I have food, I have shelter, I have all my limbs, I have this, I have that. So I would always look at the gratitude and the blessings that were happening,
Yes.
opposed to saying, why me? Why is this? Why that?
Right.
Because when it came to school, sports, or career, I always realized that I was naturally good at some things that other people would struggle with. And then I would see it from another perspective and say, hey, this is a gift. So with those experiences, that pain was the gift, which helped me connect with others. So I've always believed that if you can heal yourself, you can then help heal others because you've been through it. You're not just teaching from a book or a theory or whatever you heard. I truly believe that the people that have been through the worst, they're really good at what they do because it's just authentic and pure. Like I'm not for everyone, you're not for everyone, but the people
Yeah.
we do relate to, we can help them in a big way.
So where do you think, how do you think you had that from the beginning? Where does that come from?
I think it came from me watching a lot of inspirational
The
movies.
movies. Okay.
Yes, that and
Interesting.
like I would play this game in my head that I was a superhero in the dungeon going through training. And I would just make up these scenarios as a kid and teen. And then the older I got, I would meet these high level people in all industries. And I was like, everybody has done this to an extent. They had their own version. So I never thought that to me it was weird. To me, it helped. So I think that it just came naturally in regards to having strong faith. And I would always talk to God. Some people call it the universe, whatever they believe in. But I would always feel that, hey, you're on the right path. Everything is happening as it should. And I felt that really young. And I stopped having fear of anything. I was just like, I'm getting pulled towards a bigger purpose. And I'm not necessarily forcing it and pushing it. So a big thing that I talk to people a lot about is that there are two types of motivation. One is the push. We push ourselves out of bed. We push ourselves to get to the gym. We push ourselves to have another call, to do this, to do that. But then when you have a cause or a purpose that's bigger than you get pulled to it or you get pulled by it. It could be God. It could be a cause that helps children, that helps people, that helps women, whatever somebody's cause or purpose is. When they're pulled by it, they less likely have to push themselves on a day-to-day basis. Yes, there's going to be moments they have to force it, but the majority of the time they're getting pulled to something and that person operates at a high level. But when you're around them, you realize that they're not really tired. Like they might sleep less, but they're always in this zone where you're like, is that person human? Like something is different about them. Like they're always go, go, go. But then you realize all the people have one thing in common and they've been through the darkest scenarios that most people won't know because they always are like in a positive mood, but they've worked on it. So I could definitely say that people go one of two paths that go through traumatic experiences. They either repeat and they don't get the help that they needed, or they lose faith, or B, they see it as a challenge and they wake up early or they mature really early and then they realize that this is a gift. So my whole mission is to help people that are drifting to get back on the right path so they can use their pain as fuel so they don't feel like they're running in circles or bringing said baggage into every relationship, business, career, or friendship that they have when you're like, all right, at this point, I think you're the problem because you keep carrying this stuff with you. We can't we can't carry this everywhere. So let's get rid of this baggage. So that's a big thing that I like to focus on is help people identify where it came from, why they have it, but then flip it to their advantage. So it no longer is a crutch or holds them back.
What do you think? Gosh, a couple questions. One, you mentioned before I asked that question, but don't let me forget what that question was.
For sure.
You said that you kind of knew coaching was the direction you wanted to go in. When you say coaching, do you specifically mean life coaching? Were you familiar with that as a potential career path at a young age, or did that come later?
I didn't know about life coaching until like I learned about Les Brown, Tony Robbins and them.
Mm-hmm.
But even in middle school, I never used the term life coaching. I just realized that I had a deep connection with people because I just didn't have the quote unquote love from family. So I got along better with strangers and had a deeper connection with them and even my friends and their family than like my own, which I believe was the reason why I went that path, because I knew what it felt like to quote unquote feel alone, even if you're in a room full of people.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure to be able to help those people, that if I see a group of people, I can always identify who may currently be going through something or who's just holding stuff from 10 plus years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where that came from, but I truly believe it's because I had the faith. So I don't push religion or push things onto people, but I always recommend that people work on their faith if they believe in whatever higher power, and then they start to get guided to that path of helping others in a deep way rather than just having a career just to have it and not really feeling any fulfillment.
Right. So, not the question I don't want to forget, but the Army, interesting that you decided to go to the Army. I know you said you just did it for the education, opportunities and stuff like that, but why did you choose to follow in your dad's footsteps in that particular, field? It could have been Navy, it could have been Air Force, it could have been Marines, right? So why the Army?
I just always love the mentality behind it, and I love a challenge. I know I needed the physical and the mental challenge and just get out of my shell, because I was the quiet kid, but I knew having to be surrounded by different personalities and having that constant pressure, I knew that I would thrive. And like growing up watching Rocky movies, watching just wild stuff and just immersing myself. Like I literally got obsessed as a kid watching all this stuff. And I was like, I need to put myself in tough situations to become a better man. And it just like happened naturally. So nowadays, when I see kids that lack positive father figures, I notice that they need that sports. They need that camaraderie. They need the military. They need something that has like a group setting, structure where they can grow. So I am definitely happy that I did have a father who did have that structure, and I did have a mother who was very disciplined, because it helped me. And that was like the cheat code to having a successful career, because all those things were just normal. Waking up, seeing your parents up at 4 or 5, working out like 360 days a year was just natural. So when I would go hang out with my friends, I'm like, oh, your family doesn't do this? That's interesting, because it was just always normal to me. And then I was like, huh, this is interesting. No wonder this part of the family or that part of the family is different. So I would always have these realizations growing up, and I felt like I was kind of having outer body experiences. Like I've never touched a drug in my life, but just going through all these things, I would always like zoom out and see things from a higher perspective.
That's what the quiet kid does, right? You observe.
Yeah, exactly. I was that quiet observer. And then like I could be zoned out and just thinking of stuff. And the teacher's like, hey, and for some reason I would always have the right answer. And I was like, I don't know which has happened, but hey, here I am. But it was interesting. So I realized that a lot of people that have had quote unquote trauma, they all have gifts that relate to each other that make an impact on others.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the question I don't want to forget, what do you think it takes for someone? What do you look for or want someone to have when they come to you? And when I mean like a self-awareness, a want to change, a need to change, a realization, I'm assuming there must be something that happens in their life to make them seek out someone like you, like a life coach. So what is that thing, do you think?
So some of the common things are someone that wants to have more certainty and confidence, not just in their body, their physique, but at any given moment, be able to go into a social setting, get that call to give a presentation, get that person to say, hey, it's time to go on a date, whatever the scenario is, at any given moment, they can show up authentically and certain. Because a lot of people can't do that. They have to have the stars align. They have to have that shot of vodka before they enter. They have to have some type of vice or some type of preparation. But my intent with every client is to just instill in them the principles of getting that foundation to have discipline, certainty, and confidence. So no matter what time of day or time zone they're in, they can show up and get things done and not worry about like how many hours of sleep they had, how much caffeine they had. And then they have that confidence to, at any given moment, lead by example. So it all depends on person by person, but the majority of people I work with, they just felt like they were missing that, where they were carrying around stuff, which was affecting their confidence, their certainty, and people would see them in a different way. Like they had the potential, but they felt like something was missing. So we dive deep on that.
So what does a life coaching session look like?
So mainly what it looks like is identifying exactly what they want to work on, and then peeling back the layers of what can we get rid of first. So an easy example of the difference between life coaching and therapy is, and there's nothing wrong with therapists, teach their own, but a lot of people I've worked with had therapists for 10 plus years and they've been running in circles. And just from a coaching standpoint, I'm like, so you've been talking about your past of that, traumatic experience over and over and over for years on end with this person, and all they do is take notes and they haven't really given you solutions. And then we work together for X amount of weeks and their life completely changes. So we focus on results. Everything is designed to get that person results. We don't pretend that those things didn't happen. We just take more control. So if somebody is in a low state, the whole thing is about closing the gap between how fast they can get back up or get back down. So if somebody is in a heightened state of anger or aggression, how quick can we get them to come back down? Or if they're in a low depressed state, how quick can we get them to come back up? And so a question I ask people is, how long do you want to stay in this state? And if they're aggressive, they're like, 5 minutes. And it's funny at first because they're like, who asked me that question in the height of my state? And that's a question I like to ask people. I just interrupt. I'm like, hey, I understand what's happening, but how long do you want to stay here? And it catches people off guard, even if they're very low and they have to decide. I'm like, it's your objective. You make the decision. Some people say 1 day. I'm like, okay, 1 day. So we're going to set an alarm and then we go back to it. So every session is about getting them quick results that get them closer to their goal so they have control. Because some people are successful on paper, but they have no control of their personal life, or they control their personal life, but their finances suck. Like there's always something. So we pinpoint what needs the most help so they feel like they have control of everything. So they're not getting pulled in all directions.
It kind of sounds to me like maybe life coaching is more forward looking, where therapy is backward looking, right?
Exactly.
And that's kind of the point of my podcast, Without Regret, is learn from those things that happened in the past, but don't stay there. Don't live in that. Move forward from there and don't regret those things, because those things have taught you a lesson and brought you to where you are today or where you're going to be in the future.
Exactly.
You know, if you can let that stuff go. So that's kind of what it sounds like to me. I don't have a life coaching certificate yet, but that is something I would like to pursue at some point in the future. So
awesome.
That question was really more for me.
Perfect. It's honestly one of the most fulfilling things. I know with social media, that phrase, that title gets thrown around a lot. And like, I'm 33. So if I were to say it to my family or other people I grew up around, they're like, what are you, a life coach? And then I show them videos of people I've worked with. They're like, he had an addiction. Now it's gone within 3 months. I'm like, yes, you can penetrate the mind and give people solid action steps to take and that accountability where you'd be mind blown how quick people can completely change their life. And those are my favorite things about what I do. It's the fulfilling part, knowing that the positive ripple effect that happens to everyone around them, their kids, their wife, their husband, their coworkers, their staff, clients, whoever comes in contact with them is going to feel that, and they're going to positively affect people opposed to infect them. Negativity is rampant and everybody's just infecting people. You're at a red light. Everybody like has this weird negative energy all the time. But the people that are excited about their mission and their life, they just have a higher vibration and they positively affect each other. So that's all we're trying to create, is make sure that they're that positive light and no longer that negative Nancy to everyone.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. So, but you focus a lot also on fitness specifically. I mean,
Yes,
that's kind of your outlet personally, right? And but
exactly.
you also not only help people with financial, relationship, a career, but also with the fitness. So are you like a personal trainer as well?
Yes. So what got me into life coaching was I became a personal trainer when I was 15, and I was always helping athletes and then also regular civilians get into shape. But years later, if I would see them out in public and I saw that they lost their progress, one side of me would be annoyed, but I wouldn't say it to them. But deep down, I knew that I let them down because I didn't make the psychological shift. So that's actually what inspired me, was seeing clients that I saw years or months later that lost all the progress we made, where I felt like I let them down.
Hmm.
So I was like, I'm going to make this my mission. So I'm not just the body guy and I'm not just the mind guy. Everything
Hmm.
is connected
It is all
because
connected. That's
exactly.
very
So
true.
that's what inspired me to make sure that I didn't let them down. So nowadays, people less likely ever go backwards because we made that mental shift. So,
Hmm.
like an example could be I have a client that has a major sugar addiction and bad relationship with food. So, we worked on that psychologically, and then the body started changing. And with some, it's the opposite, where they just have an issue getting to the gym and they're fine mentally. So, then we do it completely backwards. But it's always interesting what works for who. But
Hmm.
once they start to vibrate on a higher level and they're happy and proud, they surprise themselves. They're like, hey, I haven't gone to scale in 2 weeks, but I'm down 10 pounds. Interesting. And she or he used to be addicted at 6 a.m., 7 days a week to get on that scale. And they're going on a daily emotional roller coaster.
Hmm.
And then once they have more discipline and self trust, they almost stop thinking about the scale and the numbers because they just feel better. They start getting the compliments. They show up more authentically at work and their relationships. And it's awesome to see because they're more calm and confident. And then they get surprised by their original goal where they're like, oh, I actually already crushed that goal. Cool. What else can I do? And you just see them in a whole different light. So
Right.
that's my
Yeah,
favorite
I
part.
know definitely hitting those goals is a huge motivator to hit more goals. That certainly
Oh,
has
yeah.
been a huge motivator for me personally is goals. And that's kind of one of my things is, my 7 steps to setting goals that you can actually achieve, you know, not just having a pie in the sky out there, but follow this plan, and set your goals and yeah, go to my website to download that. That's not for you. That's for my other listeners.
Oh, yeah. Shameless plug. Plug it in. Plug
Yeah,
it in.
shameless plug. Why not? So in your bio on Podmatch, you did mention also the unique challenges of being, you say you're mixed race, but what are the challenges that you've experienced just being at least partially Black man in America? I know that's not necessarily the easiest place to be these days or ever. So what have been your challenges around that and how have you managed to overcome that?
Great question. So, number one, I'm from Pensacola, Florida, which is in the Panhandle. It's like 15 minutes
I'm
from
from
Alabama.
Jacksonville.
Perfect. So you're familiar. So, as you know, in the South, in some areas, I love the South, but obviously racism exists. But what's interesting with me, a lot of mixed people can relate to this, is that more of the hate did not come from white people. It actually came from our own people
Mm.
because you are like the black sheep. So, like when you grow up watching movies or
Or the white
things
sheep.
about the South, you always think, exactly, you're the white sheep. There's always like a preconceived notion that people assume there's always going to be from the opposite side because the way that I look. But with my experience, the only bullies I had were black people. So
Oh,
like I had to prove myself because I was light skinned
right.
or the quote unquote pretty boy or the
Hmm.
guy that wanted to be like Michael Jackson and Prince. And in my head, I was like, this is the stupidest mentality ever. And I was
Hmm.
like, okay, I guess I gotta fight just to prove myself. And in my head, I was like, I don't want to hurt anyone. But growing up, my parents had me in martial arts.
Hmm.
So I was like, all right, I'm able to protect myself and I have a lot of aggression coming from at home. I don't want to take it out on this kid's face, but I almost have to because I got to prove myself. So there's a couple of times middle school and high school where I had to get violent. Nobody was majorly hurt, but then everything shifted when they're like, hey, we want you on our basketball team. We want
Mm.
you on our team. And in my head, I'm like, so I just had to make this kid bleed for you to accept me. I'm like, this is the stupidest thing ever. But that was my experience with it.
Mhm.
And then when it came to other racial things that just affected me on a personal level, was more so relationship based. So I could handle racism and just be calm. I don't lose my cool. Things don't affect me. I'm just like, cool. If I ruin your day walking in your restaurant, that's a personal problem. Sucks to live that way.
Yeah, it's
So
your
to me, it
problem,
doesn't
not
bother
mine.
me.
Yeah.
Like I just play along with it. But the time that it would affect me the most was with my girlfriend. Like if we travel and we're in the South and we're a mixed couple, anytime that people would say something to either us or look at her weird, that's the only time that I would start to get
Mhm.
angry, but I would never give somebody the reaction they expect. So it's very difficult, but I would kill people with kindness. So I remember one particular moment, we are out at dinner, people were just talking, and I ended up paying for their check, even though I could tell there's a lot of aggression and animosity. And then on the way out, I just like smiled and waved, and they're just like all pissed off and they didn't know what to do. And I just felt like I had the upper hand. So with that being
Yeah.
said, the older I got, I would always flip it and give them the opposite of what they expect. They expect Tammy to react a certain way. They expect me to react a certain way. So I do the opposite. And again, it's very difficult, but when you have a lot of emotional awareness and emotional matureness,
Mhm.
you don't fly off the handle. So with those different experiences, it was interesting because it helped out in my careers, but also being able to read people easier. You can tell why somebody is the way they are. They're usually number one is they're just insecure. Number
Mhm.
two could be they're just continuing what grandma and grandpa taught them. So like they're just brainwashed by family,
Yeah.
and I feel bad about that. Like it is what it is. But then I always wanted to be like that token memory where they're like, excuse my language, but if you watch Dave Chappelle, like when he first came out with the Dave Chappelle show, the first episode ever was, I don't know if you ever saw, he was a
I don't.
blind.
I didn't see the Dave
Okay.
Chappelle show, but I've seen his specials
Okay.
on
Gotcha.
Netflix.
Gotcha.
He's hilarious. I love him.
Gotcha. The reason I'm asking is because if your listeners ever watched the first episode of the Chappelle show, basically he has a skit where he was the blind black man and he was part of the KKK. I would quote that
I
episode
think
so
I've
much
heard
to
of it.
people in
Yes.
public, and people would like get so uncomfortable or they would laugh. And so like I would use those quotes in public and people would just be like, what just happened? And I would just confuse them. And then they would just laugh and they'd always be like, you know what? That guy's pretty cool. And that's all I wanted to do. It was just like remind them. So once I walked away or they walked away and they're like, why was I so angry? Like there was no negative interaction. So I always plan to just be that positive light where I'm like, I don't care if you hate my whole race, but you're not going to have anything negative to say about
Yeah.
me. Like that's a personal problem. But yeah, so those different experiences, number one, just having to prove yourself on the basketball court or on the field in sports because you look a certain way, or on the flip side, holding back them wanting that reaction of violence. So it was interesting how the duality of both sides, but still being able to control the situation, even though
Yeah.
sometimes to get the positive outcome, you had to do something bad, but it's always been interesting. But some people, they're always stuck in that mindset.
It seems like a little bit of a extra struggle because you got it from both ends. You get it from both sides.
Oh yeah,
But
it is always interesting hearing that, like different mixed people,
mhm.
because I would ask some of my friends, especially with being a military brat, you have black parents with the Asian and like a lot of military people are mixed. So we
Mhm.
saw these different things, and growing up on military bases, you're like, huh, we're not the only ones that realize this. But then once you go to public schools, you're like, oh, people don't even realize this stuff happens. They're just like, oh, you're lucky. You're both. You're like, yeah, that is cool. There's a gift to it. It is unique. But on the flip side, you're like, hey, did you know that this and this happens? You're like, oh my God, that is
Right.
wild. So you have hate from both sides. I was like, hey, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, no matter what hate somebody receives, if you can use that to your advantage and realize that broken people just want to break other people,
Mhm.
and just look at it from a macro level where you're like, they just want to repeat things. So they're miserable. They want to make you miserable.
They were.
So I would
Misery
challenge
loves
everybody.
company. I tell you what, I never
Exactly.
realized the true meaning of that until, more recently, where it's just like, wow, misery really does love company.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're miserable, so they want to make everybody else around them miserable. And killing them with kindness, I think is awesome. Because then they're just
Yeah.
like, what just happened? Like, that's not the
Exactly.
reaction I expected. That's not the stereotype I had in my brain about this person based on what they look like.
For sure.
So
Those key moments, their facial expressions are golden. Those are priceless moments. We just don't say a word. I'm like, I wish I had a camera for all these
Yeah.
experiences and just had like a yearbook for myself. Hey, 2002, the first time I used this on somebody. And I'm like, but
Yeah.
I know when those people go back to their car or go home, they're going to think about it. So if you can have
Mm-hmm.
that moment with
Mm-hmm.
people where they question themselves or their beliefs, and they're like, why am I so angry? Like I just wake up pissed off. So with some people, you could be that shining light that changes the way that they think. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? They're the first one that didn't give the reaction that everybody else does. Interesting. It's difficult, but things can change. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather be the person that makes a shift than be the person that continues things.
Continues the narrative and gives them
Exactly.
what they're expecting.
For
That's
sure.
not the answer I was expecting, but I love it. Definitely love that answer.
I
So,
appreciate it.
your video, I think I want to say at the very end of your video here, you said that you would give people, you know, a few steps of where to go from here. So what would your advice be for, I mean, just anybody struggling in life, no specific scenario, but just like how to get started
Yes, for
making a
sure.
change?
Definitely. I always recommend number one, the basics. I focus on helping people wake up at the same time every day. Your circadian rhythm controls more than we think. So, which is our inner clock. So I challenge everybody, no matter what time zone they're in, no matter what their work schedule is. I challenge people to wake up 7 days a week at the exact same time, do it for a month and see what happens. They will begin to start to feel way more in control. They'll wake up before their alarm clock and they'll start to get tired faster and sleep better. At first, it does seem weird to some or seems like a nice challenge, but it's interesting what happens if they just treat themselves like a machine and literally just do things like clockwork. Because if they can get that down, things start to become easier. So, like my example, I wake up at 4 every morning. It's not a challenge. I just need 2 hours to myself. I work out, then I have some me time, and then I start my first calls around
4
6:30 or 7.
a.m.
Yes.
Wow.
The reason why I feel like I have to prep for the world because I talk to people all day, and I mean I
Mm-hmm.
love it, but that's the only time that I get me time, and I love the quietness. So if
Mm-hmm.
somebody's very spiritual or into faith, there's power hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. where max creativity and max connection to higher power occurs. So if somebody's had those experiences where like they wake up at that time and they just have a rush of gratitude or good feelings, I would challenge people to capitalize on those moments. So step one would be waking up at the same time, doing that for 30 days and seeing what happens. The intent is for them to have more control of their morning. If they can own the morning, they'll be more proactive than reactive. Because most people, they hit snooze 6 times, then they're in traffic, then they're late, then they're pulled in all directions. And then like they created their own stress. So before 10 a.m., they're just like, oh my God, I already need a shot of bourbon or something. Like, Jesus, like they're already ripping their hair out. But if
So
they at least start
when
to,
you say you gain control over your morning, you're basically saying you're giving yourself the time you need. So you're not rushing, you're not, and you're able to
exactly.
meditate or work out or do whatever and get it done and out of the way so that you're not creating the stress for yourself.
Exactly, because we have to earn that confidence and earn that calmness, which starts from the early wake up and then moving the body. If somebody doesn't want to lift weights, go jog, walk their dog, do yoga, anything that's active. Within 30 minutes of waking, if they get active, they're going to feel much more in control of their day. And it doesn't matter what the activity is, but then they'll feel more open. So 30 minutes before the workout, they hated the world. They didn't want to talk to anybody. After the workout, confidence is up. I'm about to crush this day. Like, everybody's
Mm-hmm.
bipolar to an extent. So if they can earn that confidence in the morning, they can control most of their day. So
Okay.
it's just all about being more proactive. So that is one tip. And another one would be to say out loud or in your head the phrase, people depend on me. People depend on me. Because when we wake up, we want to hit snooze. We don't want to do that. Everything is selfish. Me, I, me, this. They make everything about themselves. It's all by design. But if they can flip it in those moments and say, you know what? I am tired. I am this. There is a lot going on, but people depend on me. And if they can help show up and serve others more, they think of themselves less and they operate at a higher level. Even if they did only get 4 hours of sleep or only had one coffee, if they normally have three, like whatever outside sources they think they have, if they start thinking of others first, they'll start showing up better because when you're in that selfish state, you don't care to talk to other people. You don't care about doing this thing. It's just all about them and themselves. So waking up earlier, getting some body movement in regards to exercise, hydration, and then continuously saying in their mind that people depend on them and thinking of those people, their kids, their family legacy, that stranger down the road who always looks up to them. Somebody is always watching. So if they keep that in the front of their mind, they'll stop being just in their own realm and think of others where they can operate at a better level.
Interesting. Okay. So let's talk about how people can reach you if somebody wants to reach out to you. I see your website is fitwithderick.com, and that's DERICK.
Yes. So they can either reach out to me there, or my favorite app is Instagram. I feel like it's most personal, which is Fit with Derick 2, with the number 2, Fit with Derick 2. And my intent of that is to just show my daily process. And I always tell my friends or my followers and clients that I don't miss, which basically means I'm up at 4. So if they click it, they're like, oh, he's at it again. He's at it again. And all it is feeling to them that the only reason that people are in a different level in life is because they're just super consistent. Because people like make things way too difficult nowadays. There's all these gadgets, there are all these strategies, there's AI and all this. It's just like, wake up at the same time, do this, have a good daily process, and things become easier. So my whole intent is to simplify things while all this other stuff is happening, making it seem so hard or difficult or outlandish. It's like basic steps, go back to the basics and you'll have more control.
All right. Well, it has been very enlightening having you on, and I thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Tammy.
And if there's any last words, go ahead. If not, have a great evening. Are you still in Florida?
No, I actually live in Panama City, Panama.
Oh, so, Panama. Oh, wow.
Yes, the country Panama.
What time is it there?
We're Central Time now, so they actually don't fall forward or back, so it's 7:08. But yes, so my girlfriend and I wanted to live outside the country for a bit, so we've been here a year and a half, and it's convenient because you get a direct flight to most major cities in the States. It's only a 2-hour flight from Miami, but yeah, we just want to be out of the country for a bit. And yeah, when you serve your country for a decade and you see what's happening, you kind of want to leave for a bit. So that's another big thing. I was like, all right, this administration thing. So yeah, so we just wanted some time away. And then probably at the end of this year, we'll move back to South Florida. But yeah, if somebody hasn't had the chance to live outside the country, I recommend it. Even if it's just 3 months, you'd be surprised. A lot of countries, they love U.S. citizens, and there's a lot of perks to it. So just getting some time away.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never had the opportunity to live outside the country, but I've certainly been able to visit several places outside the country, and it is
awesome.
It's, it's so great to go see it for yourself instead of just hearing other people's opinions of it, because typically their opinions aren't accurate. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, for sure.
Like everybody says, people in France hate Americans. No, they don't. They were really nice. I've been there twice. They were very nice. Like,
exactly.
I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe they just didn't like you.
Yeah. Some people, like we said earlier, like they don't have the humility, pride and egos in the way. I'm like, are you sure they're the problem or are you the problem? Like,
the self-awareness, right? Like I really push self-awareness. That's like my biggest things. You've got to think about, because you can't control other people. You can only control what you do on a daily basis and how you react to certain situations. So stop thinking about, well, this person did this and this person did that, and think about how you reacted to that and how what you did may have influenced how they reacted to you, and think, because that's all you can do is change how you behave. You can't change them. So that's kind of that's where I live.
That's awesome. And people need that more than ever, because people's reaction is so, it's like, chill out. My favorite time was during quarantine when people were all uncomfortable. I mean, you're from Florida. We didn't really care about masks, teach their own. But in Tampa, Florida, we didn't give a damn. So my intent in Publix or in Target or anywhere was to make people smile. So like, I would just ask them a question about what's in their cart. And I would always ask the people that I could tell were super uptight, that they haven't really had human interaction in a while. I'd be like, hey, why'd you choose that pasta? And they're like, oh, it's the Alfredo. My grandma used to make it. And they're slowly opening. I'm like,
Did anybody ever say, it's the only one they had on the shelf? Or was that not a problem in Florida either?
There's a few scenarios where like they don't want to say anything, but then I'll flip it. but at least I tried. But
Right.
going back to like the conversation we had earlier is I just always want to be like that positive impact of their day.
Right.
That's all it is. If I'm in an elevator, I break the ice. I can't just sit there and be awkward with everybody else. I start cracking jokes or doing whatever, make people smile and laugh, get them out of their shell, especially the people that are tense. Like they hold things in. I just want people to release. I'm like, hey, you feel that? Do more of that. Have a great day. And they're like, I don't know what just happened, but I feel amazing.
So you are like Tony Robbins in the movie Shallow Hal.
Oh
in
yeah,
the
definitely.
elevator
If
when
I
he
can,
had the-
if I can sense somebody, if I can sense somebody stiff or they're angry or whatever they are, I try to just get them to release something. I'm like, hey, what's on your mind? What's really on your mind? And they just start ranting. I'm like, you feel good? All right, perfect. Don't carry that stuff around. Have a great day. And they're like, what the heck? You noticed that? I'm like, it's all right here.
Yeah, that's awesome. I should do more of that. I do try to, like, if I see somebody and I like their outfit or whatever, I try to give, especially women, and, you know, just show love to other women because, you know, we are really mean to each other sometimes. So I always try to do that, but I'm a little shy, believe it or not. So I don't do it all the time.
That's surprising. That's surprising. But that really works though, because we've all been on the receiving end of that. We had a terrible day or a terrible moment, and the little old lady, the kid, whoever spoke to us. And then when we get back to our car back home, we're like, wow, how did they even approach me? I had RBF all day and I didn't realize I needed this little interaction, 30 seconds or 2 minutes, whatever it was. So being that for somebody else can really make an impact.
Very true. All right. Well, thank you again.
I appreciate
it.
And
I will really let you go now and enjoy Panama. That sounds amazing.
All right. Thank you, Tammy. Enjoy Jacksonville.
Yeah, I'm actually in Colorado now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's only 6 here because I'm mountain time, but I moved out here almost 6 years ago from Jacksonville. But yeah.
Awesome.
I go back often.
You got tired of the humidity. You needed some.
Definitely got tired of the humidity. Absolutely. And it's just kind of a nice happy medium here. Not too hot, not too cold. Except this past winter, it was too cold. But other than that, and today was 102 degrees, but you know, whatever.
There you go. It's an interesting time we're in now. So
it is for sure. All right. Thanks again. Have a great evening.
I appreciate it, Sammy. Take it easy. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to Without Regret, the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe. Leave me a review wherever you get your podcast. That would be really awesome because that's how my podcast is going to get noticed. So that would be a huge help, or share it on your social media would be awesome as well. Thank you so much. This podcast is a Without Regret production, which is produced by me. Artwork is by me. Everything's by me except for that theme song. That's by a guy named Michael Bergoglio. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Without Regret Podcast and on Instagram at without_regret_podcast. Thanks again.